Hi, and welcome to the Kindergarten 6th Week's Science Curriculum Preview. We're going to briefly talk today about organisms and the environment, Part 2, your very last unit for science for the year. As always, we'll be using some of these key planning documents, so if you have those handy, that's great. If not, you might want to pause and go ahead and grab a copy of those. Okay, so we talked about this last 6 weeks. I just want to remind you that the grade levels, grade 1 through 4, are doing some specialized biome work this 6 weeks. And kindergarten and 5th grade kind of use a variety of general habitats. I just want to make you aware of what the different grade levels are doing because they may have some projects or some things that would make some neat collaboration for your kinder students to go and look at some of these specialized biome. So first grade is doing the desert the 6 weeks. Second grade is looking at the grassland. Third grade is the rainforest, and the fourth grade is looking at aquatic systems, specifically freshwater wetlands. And as a reminder, kindergarten can use a variety of any kind of environment or biome to focus in on their life science standards, just like we talked about last 6 weeks. So let's take a closer look at our focus for this 6 weeks. This 6 weeks is Unit 7, and the reason that it's in Unit 7 is because in the second 6 weeks we had a little mini preview of seasonal plants back in the fall, and we'll be spiraling back to those standards and then hitting those again this 6 weeks. There's a couple of reasons why the scope and sequence is designed like that. One, when we look vertically, plants are really an area that we need a lot of support in. All the way up through 5th grade. It tends to be an area where students have some misconceptions and don't really have always a strong understanding of some of the form and functions and the life cycles within the plants. So we're hoping to really create that broad base. And we can also come back and talk about the fall plants versus the spring plants as well. So this 6 weeks, we are going to be looking at parts of plants. Specifically, last 6 weeks, we looked at more of the animal components. This week, the 6 weeks, will be plants. Looking at young and parent plants, and then looking at the plant life cycle. So just a reminder for a couple of resources along with the content, we also have process skills that are spiraled in with this as well, K.3b specifically. So I just want to remind you, I've told you about this resource before, so I'll just briefly go over that. But there's some places in STEM Coach in Action that have some specific areas of support for kinder. And also just want to remind you of the tools since this is our last 6 weeks. Kindergarten has 15 different tools that were listed for the students to discover and use over the year. So if you've missed out on any of those, this would be a great time to incorporate those in. And if you're looking for some specifics on how to use those tools or some picture cards for some environmental print, those are also available in the teacher toolbox, and you can get that in STEM scopes in the teacher toolbox, and that'll show up right here whenever you go into login. And once you get in there, there's going to be a little process skill primer that will have a tools area that you see circled on the top and then the process skills. So I know many of you are familiar with those, so just a quick reminder about where those are. When you get into the tools primer, there'll be little sheets that talk to you about how to frame the usage for some of the tools for the 6 weeks, as well as any that maybe you want to go back and spiral back to, as well as some tool cards. And then there's also, this is K.3b is a process skill that's partnered with the content. So there's some framing for that specifically for your kinder kids. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's in the unit overview. If you've used these unit overviews, you know that I break down the key concepts for the unit, which you'll see on the top. And then also I'll give you some very specific points and some tips about maybe how you can frame and some materials that you can use for that. So I've got some possible misconceptions that I've seen come up vertically that you can help your students to kind of head off a little bit. Also, don't forget, as always, specifically by standard, I list some tightly aligned resources in STEM scopes as well as aims. and EduSmart, and then some additional things that we might have as far as Lakeshore kits and the Delta readers, and then maybe some other things there too. So as you're planning, you may be thinking, wow, we only have a few content standards. This seems like a long time when we look at the pacing guide to spend on each one. Well, that's because we're really wanting to thoroughly cover that and go through the 5E arc thoroughly. As well as bring in those process skills. So if you take a look at the unit overview, I think you'll see lots of resources to help you really hit that standard very deeply. So just to mention, as we end up the year, about the Tier 1 priorities for science. I know many of you work on these and talk about where you are as a campus and a grade level in your PLCs. I met recently with the principals about usage for the science lab, and many of them had asked me to just remind teachers of how and when they could be using the science lab with their students. And as a kinder grade level, you may have waited until the spring to really start taking your students into the science lab, which is great. They're a lot more independent now than they were at the beginning of the year. The science lab will typically not be used as much in the life sciences unit as well, so it may be easier if the scheduling is an issue for you. So I just have some ideas when we talk about meeting the a daily percentage of hands-on instruction. That's way up at 80% for K students. And so I just want to frame a little bit of how you can meet that. So here's a picture of a campus, and they were doing a plant unit just like you're getting ready to do. And it was just a simple setup of going and getting some plants and then letting the students really look at the different parts with a hand lens. This is a perfect thing to do in the science lab so that the students next year can understand what the science lab space is for, how to act in the science lab safely, how to sit on the stools or push the stools in to stand, and so forth. So if you haven't had a chance to get your students into the lab very much, this is a great time of the year. A couple of other ways that you can get that hands-on. Remember, hands-on science, of course, doesn't only have to have in the lab, but if you're not utilizing that space, I just want to encourage you to do that. But of course, with life sciences, it's a perfect time to take your kiddos outdoor. These are students here from Porter Elementary in Kinder who are doing some outdoor studies with their journals, and that these are some fifth grade students looking for some ladybugs just right outside their classroom. So life science doesn't always have to be inside. You can find a lot of things on your playground, and you'd be surprised once you start looking what you can find. So again, I mentioned this before about the 15 different tools that your students should have been introduced in using this year. So just a reminder about that. And you can really see vertically how important that tool usage is, because when they get up to third grade, there's a huge jump in the number of tools they need to use. So if they thoroughly understand those 15 or 16 that K1 and 2 have introduced, they can spend a little bit more time on learning how to use those more specialized tools in the upper grade levels. The tools specifically listed for this 6 weeks are a notebook, a terrarium, and then an insect net. And if you go back into the slides previously, you'll see that there's some tool cards to help you with that. And if you set up a terrarium back in the fall, you can bring that back around. But there's plenty of materials in the science lab. Lots of grade levels have seeds, lima bean seeds, radish seeds. Just go to your science resource manager and ask them for some potting soil or some seeds, and you'll find everything you need to get started. If you are interested in getting some summer PD for any of the Tier 1 priorities, but specifically 5E and how that looks as far as the hands-on, so really looking at this piece as well as this piece, be on the lookout in April for the summer PD catalog, and I'll have some sessions, and I always tailor those specifically for the grade levels that come. Okay, so as we kind of wrap up a little bit, I just wanted to remind you about some interactive word wall examples. These are all images from the Science Toolkit Facebook page, which we had training on that earlier back in the fall. So here are some examples from Kinder that specifically go with the unit. So just a couple of ideas. Just to kind of get you going. If you've not jumped into an interactive word wall, now would be a great time to do that. We've got a little bit more time this 6 weeks. It might be a good time to try it out. I've put in a brand new resource for Kinder this year, and I'm wanted to introduce that to you. And this is from a book that you'll see over in the corner here, Uncovering Student Ideas for Primary Science. And these are called science probes. And you can see the sheet on the left-hand side. It's a really used as a maybe as a formative assessment or as an introduction before you start to talk about defining what is a plant. I really love these probes because they're very simple, they're very straightforward, but they go very deep and have opportunities for some really rich conversation and really can allow you to listen to your students and see what they think about something before you studied it or maybe even after. So this page you would give to the students, and then there's also a teacher instruction page right here, talks about this concept at your grade level. What does it look like with a kinder student? And then it talks just very briefly about how you administer, and this is called a probe. And I've got this linked in Canvas, so you can go back there and get the PDF copy of it, but I also put it in Fortha under the related resources. I'm not sure if I will have the budget to purchase this book for everyone, but there are many, many probes. There's 25 in this particular book, so if you have some grade level money and this looks like something you would like, I would highly recommend getting that. And if you have any questions about where to get that, let me know, but I've linked that also in the unit overview. Okay, I have two updates that I want to talk to you about that affect the science standards. So some of you may know, but TEA formed a committee last fall to look at streamlining the science standards for K through 8. Where they are in the process, you can look at the slide, but right now they are looking at public comments based on the recommendations that the committee made to streamline. And what that means is they've looked at the kindergarten standards and they've looked at it vertically as well within the content areas for kinder, and they've looked to see what could be streamlined, meaning deleted or edited or clarified. So not adding anything new, but just clarifying and maybe streamlining and cleaning it up a little bit. There's not a ton of changes for kinder, but there are some. And so I will be rolling that out on our district PD day. There'll be a session for kinder teachers so that you can really see all of those reviews or those revisions and have some time to plan accordingly. If you're interested in looking to see what those recommendations are, those are back on the Canvas page, as well as if you want to go searching in TEA, but the Canvas page has that link as well. Okay, and then finally, I have an updated s'more back in Canvas that will list several professional development opportunities, not only here in the district, but also in the area. We've got lots and lots of great stuff in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as far as science goes for primary teachers, as well as some of the resources that I've purchased that are brand new. They're in your science lab right now. There's a visual guide there. So head on back to the s'more that's in Canvas, and you can get a look of what's available for you. So thank you so much for this quick overview. I hope you have a great last 6 weeks and a wonderful summer. As always, let me know how I can help support your science program. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.